It's very much a creative home. I was first invited here in 1999 to talk about my first book, Fragile Edge, which had been republished in North America. Actually, this is something I'm going to say tonight at the award ceremony. I arrived here quite nervously because I'm not a mountain person, I'm not a climber, and I just didn't know how I'd be accepted. And I found myself among a tribe of people who are endlessly curious about the world and explore it in all sorts of different ways, and who generously accepted me. And you know, they've kind of, it does feel tribal when I'm here, and I feel like I belong here. And I've returned many times to present about different books, and I've done 3 writing residencies here. And in fact, I started writing instead at the Mountain and Wilderness Writing Program here in 2019. The book instead is about my decision not to have children, and how that allowed me to create a very adventurous life, a very unconventional life. But I guess at the root of all that was loss, because I had 2 very traumatic experiences in my 20s. The first was when I had a near-drowning experience in Morocco when I was 21, and was hauled out of the ocean, not breathing, and resuscitated on the beach. So that gave me a very early awareness of the fragility of life and how quickly it can slip away. And that in itself was a gift, of course, you know, because I woke up on the beach amazed at being alive, and I've never stopped being amazed, actually. And that's a gift, you know. This is it, you know, take advantage of it. But then a decade later, my partner, Joe Tasker, a climber, perished on Mount Everest. He was lost without trace. And that was a terrible loss for me. I developed a fear of loss. I thought, if it's so, and particularly around the idea of having children, I thought, if it's so terrible to lose a partner, what would it be like to lose a child? And I felt I just couldn't face that. So in a way, you know, that kind of shaped my life and my decisions. And then when I fell in love with my husband, Doug, who shared my desire for an adventurous life, and we began to create one. But there was something we had to really negotiate, because he had always wanted children, and he thought we could have a child and take this child along on the big adventures that we were planning. And I felt I couldn't do that because I'd become very anxious. I knew I'd be way too much an anxious parent. I would always be afraid of, you know, what might happen to the child. And I knew that if I had a child, I'd have to have a different path in life. It would have to be less obviously risky, more settled, more secure in every way, because we gave up our careers. You know, when we gave up our, you know, I was a teacher, he was a vet. We gave up our careers, our pension plans, our dental plans, our medical coverage, all of those things, to forge out this new life. It was based on my dreams. You know, I'd always had a dream of I'd always had a dread of, my mother wanted me to have a very settled life, and I had a dread of being settled, being secure. When I became a teacher, I was really unhappy. I hated the way every September I knew how every week would pan out, and then how every work day would pan out with the bells ringing at the end of each lesson. You know, I'm not a routine person in that way, and yeah, so it was all based on what I knew I didn't want, really. Yeah, but I was never a happy teacher, and so eventually. So I sort of took unusual teaching jobs eventually. I worked in a reception centre for Vietnamese refugees, and I taught English as a second language. And I was planning to go and work abroad as an English as a second language teacher. And then I met the climber, Joe Tasker, and that kind of stopped me in my tracks. But yeah, it was. Doug and I have often said we've always known what we don't want. Yeah. And then we've left ourselves open and light and able to switch tracks quickly when things have presented themselves to us. But it's all been based on definitely knowing what we don't want, and letting new adventures unfold. An American company had read one of my books about around the world with a kayak trip, and contacted us to say, would we like to help them develop a new kayaking program, and could we suggest some different places in the world where they could develop new kayaking trips, and would we be interested in guiding them? So that was in 1994, we'd just returned from 3 months in Vietnam, and we suggested Halong Bay in the north of Vietnam as an amazing place to kayak. But it was very difficult in terms of getting government permissions, but they were already working in Vietnam. This is Mountain Travel Sobek. We're already working in Vietnam running trekking trips, so they had relationships with the Vietnamese government. So 2 months after that conversation, Doug was on his way back there. And with Mountain Travel Sobek, we developed the first commercial sea kayaking trip in Vietnam and guided it for a number of years, and then eventually set up on our own. With their blessing, actually, and we still did trips for them sometimes. But yeah, so we founded Hidden Places in 2000, taking people to places where we have explored, and where we found really special little, we call them gems, special places, hidden places, special experiences, people that we've met. But I mean, they're very different to the trips that we were going on our own. And because obviously, we have to we have to shepherd and look after the safety and health of a group of 10 people, so we can't take unnecessary risks with them. So it's very different than when we were setting off to kayak down the River Ganges or through the Solomon Islands. It's a completely different situation. Yeah, so I wouldn't equate it with the kind of trips that Doug and I were doing, just the two of us. Well, we now spend several months each year in Catalonia, a little village 2 hours south of Barcelona. So we base ourselves there, and so we were packing to come to Banff and then head over there, and from there, and we travel from there. It's a good base because it's an easier hop from there to get to Africa. And for example, so we'll be going to Tanzania and hopefully maybe Namibia and Kenya next spring. And so it's kind of, it's a good place to be. It's a lovely place to be for the winter, and it's a good base for our travels too.